The night glittered over Manhattan's skyline, but inside apartment 23B, the air was thick with the kind of silence that comes before a storm. Sarah Miller, 7 months pregnant, stood over the marble kitchen counter, her hands trembling slightly as she basted the golden brown turkey she'd been cooking all afternoon. It was Thanksgiving, their first one as a soon-to-be family of 3. Michael had promised to be home by 6. It was now 8:45. The gravy had thickened, the candles had burned halfway down, and the sparkling cider she poured hours ago had gone flat. The only sound in the apartment was the steady tick of the Cartier clock he'd bought to mark the beginning of their forever. Funny how forever had started to feel like an expiration date. Sarah tried to brush away the thought. He's probably stuck in traffic, she told herself. But the words felt empty. She looked around the table. 2 crystal glasses, fine china, the silver cutlery he'd chosen for future holidays together. Every piece felt like a lie tonight. Her iPhone buzzed. Michael? Emergency meeting. Don't wait up. Love you. She froze. Michael worked in real estate finance. There were no emergency meetings at 9 p.m. on Thanksgiving. Her heart thudded, not with anger but with that quiet intuition women feel before betrayal has a name. She tried calling him. No answer. She called her best friend, Lily Harper, hoping for comfort. Hey, it's me, Sarah said, forcing a laugh. He's still not home. Guess I'm having Thanksgiving for 2. Lily's voice was syrupy sweet. Oh babe, men are clueless. Don't stress. Eat, rest. He'll be back before dessert. But Sarah heard something off, the faint hum of a piano in the background. A hotel piano. She remembered the sound from the Park Hyatt lounge, where Michael once took her for their anniversary. Her chest tightened. She looked down at the counter where his AirPods sat charging, still connected to her phone. With a trembling thumb, she tapped the connection. For a moment, there was silence. Then a man's voice. Michael's voice. I told you, I'll handle it after the holidays, he said, low and sure. Lily giggled softly. Handle what? The wife or the baby? Sarah's world tilted. The room blurred, her breath catching in her throat as her knees nearly gave out. The words stabbed deeper than any scream could. The turkey timer dinged cheerfully, a cruel reminder that life goes on even when your heart stops. She turned off the oven, wiped her tears, and stared at her reflection in the kitchen window, a woman no longer naive, no longer waiting to be loved. Sarah took a deep breath, pulled out a thick manila folder labeled Emergency Legal, and whispered to her unborn child, It's okay, baby. Mommy's got us. The clock struck 9. Outside, fireworks from the Macy's parade aftershow lit up the sky. Inside, Sarah straightened her shoulders, placed the folder beside Michael's empty plate, and whispered with a calm so cold it burned, Happy Thanksgiving, Michael. The morning after Thanksgiving looked peaceful, too peaceful. Outside, the Manhattan skyline shimmered under the pale winter sun. Inside, Sarah Miller sat at the kitchen table, her swollen feet resting on the cold marble floor, staring at the untouched leftovers. The golden turkey she'd spent hours preparing now sat dry and cold inside a Tiffany blue casserole dish. Michael hadn't come home. No text, no call, just silence. Sarah's phone buzzed. It was her mother, calling from Connecticut. Sweetheart, how was your first Thanksgiving as a family? Sarah swallowed hard. It was quiet, she said softly, tracing her finger over a crack in the table. She couldn't tell her mother that the man she married, the man she trusted, was likely in a hotel bed with her best friend. No mother should hear that her pregnant daughter ate dinner alone while her husband whispered love to someone else. As she hung up, the morning light glinted off the wedding photo hanging above the mantel. The picture was perfect. Sarah in a white lace gown, Michael in a tailored black suit, both smiling like the world was theirs. It had been taken at the Plaza Hotel ballroom 3 years ago. That day, she believed in forever. Now forever felt like a cruel joke. Sarah picked up her phone again. There were no new messages. She opened the Find My iPhone app. Michael's location was still pinned at Park Hyatt, Manhattan. Room 1912. She memorized it, then turned off the screen. No need to see more than she already knew. Her hands instinctively rested on her belly. The baby kicked softly, as if reminding her that she wasn't alone. Not entirely. We're going to be okay, she whispered, though her voice cracked at the end. She thought back to how everything began, how she'd built her life around Michael. He was charming, ambitious, the kind of man who carried confidence like a tailored suit. He used to surprise her with small luxuries, a Mont Blanc pen for her nursing notes, a Cartier bracelet for luck during pregnancy. But slowly, those gifts became replacements for presents. Every diamond was another hour he wasn't home. Sarah had done everything to be the good wife. She reduced her nursing shifts to part-time at his request for the baby. She learned to cook fancy dishes he could post on Instagram. She smiled at his business dinners, even when they bored her to tears. She told herself this was love, that good wives endure bad seasons. But that night, as she replayed Lily's laugh through the AirPods, she realized the truth. She wasn't a wife anymore. She was an accessory in Michael's curated life, the soft, loyal woman he showed off at parties, the one who'd stay home while he chased attention elsewhere. A knock at the door startled her. She hesitated, heart pounding, before opening it. It was the doorman, holding an envelope. "Mrs. Miller?" This was dropped off by courier. Said it was urgent. Her name was handwritten on the front, Sarah Miller, in Lily's handwriting. Inside was a simple card. "You deserve better. Please don't hate me, things just happened." For a moment Sarah couldn't breathe. The air in her chest turned sharp. The handwriting, once familiar, comforting, now felt like venom on paper. Her vision blurred. She gripped the edge of the counter to steady herself. And then, she laughed. Not a bitter laugh, but something hollow and eerie, like glass cracking. "Things just happened," she repeated under her breath. "You happened to my husband, you happened to my family." Her phone buzzed again, this time from an unknown number. A text popped up. "Mrs. Miller, this is Grace Mitchell, attorney at law. Your cousin reached out. I believe we should talk." Sarah stared at the message. For the first time in 24 hours, she exhaled. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was just the beginning of her fight. The following Monday, snow threatened Manhattan, dusting the rooftops like powdered sugar. Sarah Miller sat at a small corner table inside a Starbucks on Lexington Avenue, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of peppermint mocha. Across from her sat Grace Mitchell. Sharp suit, calm eyes, and a presence that made even chaos listen. Grace didn't waste time. "Your cousin filled me in. You're 7 months pregnant, your husband's been unfaithful, and the other woman is your best friend. Do you have proof?" Sarah nodded, sliding her iPhone across the table. Voicemail. Messages. I heard them together through his AirPods. He's at the Park Hyatt, room 1912. Grace's expression didn't flicker. "Good. Keep those recordings backed up. From now on, everything you say or send matters. Every text, every call." She paused, leaning forward slightly. "He's planning to leave, isn't he?" Sarah swallowed. "After the baby's born." Grace sighed, scribbling notes with a Mont Blanc pen that gleamed under the cafe lights. "Then we move first. You file before he does. The court favors stability, and he abandoned you on Thanksgiving. That's gold for us." Sarah blinked, overwhelmed. "Grace, I don't want revenge. I just want peace." Grace met her gaze, voice low. "Peace comes after you win, Sarah, not before." The words hung between them, sharp and true. For a moment, Sarah thought about how she met Lily Harper 15 years ago at UCLA. They shared a dorm, split rent, and swore they'd never let a man come between them. When Sarah got engaged, Lily was her maid of honor, crying louder than anyone at the wedding. They had friendship bracelets engraved sisters by choice. Now that bracelet lay in Sarah's jewelry box, next to the ultrasound photo she once sent to Lily with the caption, "Auntie, he's waving." She took a shaky sip of her coffee. "Grace, she was in my home. She touched my belly. She told me my baby would have her eyes." Grace's expression softened just a little. "Women like that don't just betray you, Sarah. They study you. They learn your weaknesses before they strike." The words hit hard. Grace continued, flipping through her planner. "I want you to do 3 things. First, stop calling him. Let his silence build your case. Second, document your expenses. Everything tied to the baby. Third," she looked up, eyes narrowing, "find out what assets he's hiding. A man who cheats usually hides money too." Sarah nodded, her pulse steadying for the first time in days. It felt strange, this cold clarity replacing heartbreak. Grace stood, gathering her files. "I'll draft the petition. You'll review it tomorrow. And Sarah, don't tell anyone, not even your friends. Isolation is your protection now." As Grace left, Sarah sat alone by the window, staring out at the gray city. Snowflakes melted against the glass, vanishing before they touched the ground. Her phone buzzed again, a message from Michael. "Can we talk? I think we both overreacted." Sarah stared at the text. For years, she would have responded instantly. Tonight, she deleted it. Moments later, another notification lit up her screen, an email confirmation. Reservation, Park Hyatt, room 1912, extended through Friday. The ache in her chest twisted into something new. Not pain, but purpose. Sarah whispered to herself, "All right then. Let's see how far you're willing to go, Michael." Outside, snow began to fall heavier, covering the streets in white, as if the city itself was preparing for a storm. Friday came with biting wind and a sky heavy with snow. Manhattan moved slower that morning, but Sarah Miller's heart pounded faster than ever. She sat in the back of a yellow cab, her coat barely zipped, a scarf wrapped around her swollen belly. Grace's voice echoed in her mind. "If you want peace, you must face the truth, not the story you wish was true." The cab stopped in front of the Park Hyatt, the same hotel where she and Michael had spent their first anniversary, the same place he now shared with her best friend. Her reflection in the glass door startled her. Pale face, dark circles, eyes that no longer looked soft. She didn't look like a victim anymore. Inside, the lobby was warm and hushed, with a faint scent of cedar and expensive perfume. A pianist played softly near the bar, the same melody she'd heard through Michael's AirPods. That sound alone nearly made her knees buckle. She approached the front desk, forcing a polite smile. "Hi, I'm Sarah Carter. My husband, Michael Carter, might have left something here. He's staying in room 1912. The concierge hesitated, tapping on the keyboard. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we can't share guest information." Sarah leaned in slightly. "That's fine. Could you just tell him his wife stopped by?" The word wife seemed to slice through the air. The concierge blinked, then nodded nervously. "Of course, Mrs. Carter." Sarah turned away before he could ask questions. Her heart thundered as she pressed the elevator button. Her phone buzzed. A message from Grace. "Do not confront him emotionally. Observe, collect, leave. That's power." The elevator dinged open. She stepped out onto the 19th floor, carpet soft beneath her boots. The hallway smelled faintly of cologne, his cologne. Room 1912 stood at the far end, its door slightly ajar. Sarah froze. Voices drifted out, Lily's laughter light and false, Michael's voice lower, defensive. "Just stop talking about her, okay? It's complicated." Lily replied, "She'll be fine. You said you're done pretending." Sarah's hands shook. She pressed the door gently enough to see inside. Michael sat shirtless on the edge of the bed, scrolling his phone. Lily wrapped in one of the hotel robes, sipping champagne. The room glowed golden under soft lights, the same lights that once framed Sarah's happiest memories. Her stomach turned. She didn't scream, didn't rush in. She pulled out her iPhone and took a single steady photo, the reflection of both of them in the vanity mirror. Proof. Lily suddenly glanced toward the door. "Did you hear that?" Sarah stepped back silently, her heart in her throat, then slipped into the stairwell. Her breath came fast, but her tears didn't fall. Not yet. Outside, the cold slapped her face awake. She walked to the corner cafe and ordered a black coffee, no sugar, no cream. For the first time, she didn't flinch at the bitterness. As she sat by the window, she texted Grace, "I have what you need. Send me the next step." Within a minute, Grace replied, "Good, I'll handle the legal filing Monday. Don't contact him again. Let him wonder what you know." Sarah put her phone down, staring out at the snow falling over 6th Avenue. For years, she thought love was holding on. But maybe strength was learning when to let go, and make the other person watch you do it. She whispered, "You made your choice, Michael. Now you'll live with it." And as she watched the snow blur the city lights, Sarah smiled for the first time. Not from happiness, but from clarity. That night, Sarah Miller didn't sleep. She sat by the window of her Manhattan apartment, city lights flickering across her tired face. The folder Grace had prepared lay open on the coffee table, labeled "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage, Sarah Miller versus Michael Carter." Her name beside his looked surreal, like something from a stranger's life. She ran her fingers across the pages. Grounds, abandonment, infidelity, emotional neglect. Each word felt heavier than her own heartbeat. A part of her wanted to call him, to scream, to demand an explanation, to force him to see what he'd done. But Grace's words echoed in her head. "Don't waste your pain on noise. Turn it into evidence." So Sarah picked up her phone, not to dial, but to document. She took photos of their home, the empty chair across the dinner table, the untouched plate from Thanksgiving, the receipt from Park Hyatt that arrived in the shared email account. Each picture a quiet bullet. At midnight, the elevator chimed, Michael's keycard. Her breath caught. He stepped inside, smelling of whiskey and guilt. His shirt untucked, his expression somewhere between nervous and annoyed. "You're awake," he said flatly, as if she were the one breaking curfew. Sarah stayed seated, calm. "Did your meeting go well?" He hesitated, then smirked. "Sarah, don't start. You've been emotional lately. It's the pregnancy hormones, okay?" Her jaw tightened. That line again, the one every unfaithful man uses to make his wife doubt her own sanity. She stood slowly, the weight of her pregnancy grounding her in place. "You missed Thanksgiving. You lied. And I know where you were." His eyes flickered, just a second, but enough. "You've been checking up on me? That's unhealthy, Sarah." Her laugh was short and sharp. "So is sleeping with my best friend." Silence. Then his mask cracked. "It wasn't like that. You've been so distant. I needed someone to talk to. Lily was just a replacement," she finished for him. He rubbed his temples, frustrated. "You're overreacting. You're turning this into drama when it doesn't have to be." Sarah walked to the kitchen counter, her movements measured, almost graceful. She poured a glass of water, placed it down, then slid a thick envelope across the counter toward him. "What's this?" "Reality," she said. "Grace Mitchell, my attorney, will handle everything from now on. You'll get official notice Monday morning." Michael opened the envelope. Divorce papers, financial statements, a copy of the hotel receipt, and one photo, the reflection of him and Lily in the hotel mirror. His face went pale. "You followed me?" "No," she said simply. "You made it easy." For the first time he looked scared, not of losing her, but of what she could do to his reputation. "You don't want to do this, Sarah. You'll regret it." She met his eyes, steady and cold. "No, Michael, I regret ever believing you loved me." He slammed the envelope onto the counter and stormed out, the sound of the door echoing through the apartment like a gunshot. Sarah exhaled, her hands trembling as adrenaline left her body. The baby kicked softly as if sensing her mother's resolve. She whispered to her belly, "We're safe now. He can't touch us anymore." Outside, snow fell heavier, blanketing the streets below. Inside, the last candle from Thanksgiving flickered out. The war had begun, and Sarah for the first time wasn't afraid of the fight. The next morning, Sarah Miller woke to the sound of silence, the kind that doesn't comfort, but crushes. The apartment felt foreign, stripped of warmth. The smell of Michael's cologne still lingered faintly in the air, a cruel ghost of routine. For a moment, she wished she could pretend none of it had happened. That last night was just another argument that would fade by morning. But the divorce papers on the counter reminded her otherwise. Her body ached from exhaustion. Her eyes burned. She tried to stand, but a sharp pain sliced through her back. The baby kicked, a desperate reminder that she wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She steadied her breath and whispered, "We're okay, little one. Mommy's here." Sarah forced herself into the shower, letting the hot water sting her skin awake. She stood under the stream until the fog on the mirror turned thick, until the reflection disappeared. Maybe that was easier, not to see herself right now. Her phone buzzed from the sink. A text from Michael. "We need to talk before you do something stupid." She ignored it, but another followed. "Lily's a mess. She didn't mean for this to happen. Can't we keep this civil?" Her stomach twisted. Civil. That word, as if her broken heart was just a contract gone bad. She turned off the shower, grabbed her robe, and sat on the edge of the bed, clutching her phone. For a brief, fleeting second, she typed, "Okay, let's talk." Then she stopped, deleted it. Grace's words echoed, "Every message you send becomes part of his defense. Don't negotiate with guilt." Sarah dropped the phone and broke down for the first time since Thanksgiving. Not the quiet tears from before, but the kind that ripped through her chest. The sobs of a woman who'd held too much, too long. Her cries filled the empty apartment, bouncing off the walls that once held laughter. But grief has a strange rhythm. It comes in waves, and when it passes, clarity rushes in. An hour later, Sarah sat at her vanity, red-eyed but resolute. She brushed her damp hair back, tied it in a bun, and caught sight of something glimmering in the drawer. The bracelet Lily had given her on her wedding day. Sisters by choice. She stared at it for a long time before slipping it into an envelope. On the front, she wrote in neat, deliberate letters, "Return to sender." Her phone rang again. This time, it wasn't Michael, it was Grace. "Sarah, you ready to make it official?" Sarah inhaled deeply. "Do it." "Good. My assistant will file everything by noon. Michael will be served Monday morning. Make sure you're not home when it happens." Sarah frowned. "Why?" Grace's voice was steady. "Because men like him don't lose gracefully." The call ended, leaving Sarah in the stillness again. She walked to the kitchen, poured herself tea, and watched snow swirl over the city. Somewhere down below, life moved on. Taxis honked, people laughed, the world spun indifferent. She touched her belly and said softly, "It's okay if we fall apart for a bit. We'll build something better after." Then, almost on instinct, she opened her laptop and began searching apartments in Brooklyn. Smaller, simpler places with big windows and quiet streets. A new start. A life that didn't smell like betrayal. Just as she began to feel calm, an email notification appeared. From Lily Harper. Subject, "Please don't do this." Sarah's pulse quickened as she hovered over it. She hesitated, then clicked. The first line read, "Michael told me you're ruining his life. Please, Sarah, stop before it's too late." Her jaw clenched. Too late? She scrolled down and froze at the attached image. A photo of Michael, standing in front of the hospital where she worked. The email burned in Sarah's eyes long after she read it. Michael, standing in front of her hospital, the place she had poured 10 years of her life into, the one space she thought he'd never invade. The photo was taken that morning. He was smiling, but not the way she remembered. It was the kind of smile that dared her to react. Sarah's pulse spiked. Why was he there? He had no reason to be near her workplace. Her next thought was darker. What if he was talking to her supervisor? Trying to ruin her reputation before the divorce hit? She grabbed her coat and rushed out of the apartment, ignoring the ache in her back. The streets were slick from melting snow, the city loud and uncaring. When she reached New York Presbyterian Hospital, the sight of familiar glass walls and the faint smell of antiseptic nearly steadied her. Until she saw him. Michael was standing by the entrance, wearing his favorite charcoal coat, phone in hand. Lily wasn't with him. This time, he was alone, rehearsing his charm. He spotted her immediately. "Sarah," he said with a practiced sigh, "finally, we need to talk." She froze a few feet away. "You're not supposed to be here." "I'm here because you won't answer my calls." He gestured vaguely toward the hospital doors. "I figured I'd wait where I know you'd show up. We can't keep doing this. You're pregnant. You need calm." "Calm?" she repeated, incredulous. "You think calm comes from you showing up at my job after everything you've done?" He lowered his voice. "You're making a mistake, Sarah. Lawyers like Grace Mitchell will drain you dry. I'm offering peace. No drama. We can handle this privately." There it was again. The performance, the manipulation dressed as reason. She'd fallen for that tone before. Not anymore. "Privately?" she said, her voice steady. "You mean secretly. Like you and Lily." Michael's mask cracked for a second. His jaw tightened. "Lily made a mistake, okay? We both did. But do you really want our baby growing up with divorced parents? Think about what this does to your image, to your job." That last word cut deep. He was here to threaten her livelihood. Sarah straightened, every ounce of fear burning away. "My job?" she repeated slowly. "You think I'll let you use my baby and my career as leverage?" "Don't be dramatic, Sarah," he hissed. "You've been unstable lately. Everyone sees it. You think your boss doesn't notice? I'm trying to help you before this gets ugly." Something in her chest snapped, not from anger but from clarity. She realized he wasn't there to reconcile. He was there to plant doubt. To create a paper trail that painted her as emotional, irrational, unfit. Grace's voice echoed in her mind. Men like him don't fight fair. Sarah reached into her purse and tapped her phone's voice recorder. "Go ahead," she said calmly. "Say what you came to say." Michael blinked, realizing too late. "Sarah, don't," but she smiled faintly. "Too late." He stepped closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "You're not as smart as you think. You'll regret this." A security guard appeared near the door. "Everything all right here, ma'am?" Sarah didn't look away from Michael. "Yes, my husband was just leaving." The guard turned to him. "Sir, you'll need to step back." Michael's jaw clenched, but he complied, backing toward the street. "You're making an enemy, Sarah." "No," she said quietly. You made one the moment you touched my best friend." He left, coat whipping behind him in the wind. Sarah exhaled, legs trembling, but her hand never left her belly. The baby kicked softly. "Alive, steady, safe." She whispered, "He wants war? Then he'll get it." And as she walked into the hospital, snow began to fall again. Thin and relentless, like the truth that would soon bury him. The encounter at the hospital left Sarah Miller shaken, but strangely alive. For the first time since Thanksgiving, fear wasn't the loudest voice in her head. Purpose was. Still, when she got home that evening, the apartment felt smaller than ever. Every object carried a ghost. The wedding photo, the framed ultrasound, even the half-finished baby mobile hanging over the crib. She walked straight to the bedroom and stood before the full-length mirror. The woman staring back looked nothing like the gentle nurse who used to wait up for her husband. Her eyes were red, her face pale, her body swollen from pregnancy and grief. She whispered to her reflection, "This isn't who I am, not anymore." With trembling hands, she pulled open the closet. Michael's suit still hung there, perfectly pressed, navy, charcoal, black. She grabbed the first one, tore it off the hanger, and threw it into a trash bag. One by one, she stripped the closet clean, his shoes, his cufflinks, his cologne. The scent of betrayal burned her lungs. When the last hanger clattered to the floor, she sat down, gasping for breath. It wasn't rage, it was release. The baby kicked softly, and Sarah smiled through tears. "You're my reason, not my weakness," she whispered. Her phone buzzed. "Grace." "Sarah, how are you holding up?" "Surviving," she said honestly. "Good. I filed the petition this morning. He'll be officially served by noon tomorrow. I also reached out to a private investigator, in case we need financial evidence. Are you okay with that?" Sarah hesitated. "You think he's hiding money?" Grace's tone was dry. "Men like Michael always do." "Do it," Sarah said firmly. "Whatever it takes." After the call, Sarah sank into the couch and opened her laptop. She searched for prenatal yoga classes and support groups for single mothers. It felt surreal, planning a new life while her old one was still smoldering. Then she saw it, an online support group titled The Phoenix Mothers, Rising from Broken Marriages. She clicked join. The group chat was full of women from all over the country, lawyers, waitresses, doctors, mothers, each with a story of betrayal, survival, and rebirth. One post stood out. "The first thing you lose in a toxic marriage is yourself. The first thing you must rebuild after is also yourself." Sarah read it 3 times. It was simple, but it hit deep. She stood up, walked back to the mirror, and took a photo. Her bare face, tired eyes, hair tied back. No filters, no smiles. She uploaded it to the group with a single caption. 7 months pregnant. He cheated with my best friend. Today, I threw out his clothes. Tomorrow I start again. Within minutes, messages poured in. "You're stronger than you think. One day your baby will thank you for leaving." The comeback always hits harder than the heartbreak. For the first time, Sarah didn't feel alone. Later that night, she pulled out a small notebook from the drawer, one Michael had bought her years ago, engraved with her initials in gold. She opened to the first blank page and wrote, "Day 1, becoming me again." Then, line by line, she listed her goals. Find a new place. Stay calm for the baby. Don't answer Michael. Don't fear Lily. Remember, pain is temporary. Dignity is permanent. When she finished, she closed the notebook and placed it beside her bed. Outside, the snow had stopped. The city lights shimmered against the glass, soft and golden. Sarah looked out the window, her reflection blending with the skyline. The woman in the mirror wasn't broken anymore. She was reborn. And somewhere deep inside, she knew the real revenge wasn't destroying them. It was rebuilding herself in front of them. The next morning, Sarah Miller woke to a knock at the door. Gentle, hesitant, but persistent. For a split second, she thought it was Grace's assistant dropping off legal papers. But when she looked through the peephole, her blood ran cold. Lily Harper. Her once best friend stood in the hallway clutching a Starbucks cup and a paper bag like peace offerings. Her usually perfect blonde hair was unkempt, and her eyes were swollen as if she'd been crying for days. Sarah didn't open the door right away. She let Lily knock again. Finally, she pulled the door open just enough for her voice to pass through. "What do you want?" Lily's lips trembled. "Please, Sarah, I just need 5 minutes." Sarah's hand gripped the doorframe. 5 minutes for what? To justify sleeping with my husband? To tell me it just happened? Tears spilled down Lily's cheeks. It wasn't supposed to. Stop, Sarah snapped, voice sharp. I know every line you're about to use. I've rehearsed them in my nightmares. Lily took a shaky breath. I'm sorry, I swear I never wanted to hurt you. Michael said you were drifting apart. He said you didn't. Sarah laughed bitterly. Of course he did. He's good at rewriting history. And you, Lily, you believed him because it suited what you wanted. Lily flinched. He said he was leaving you. He was, Sarah said, her voice steady. But not before the baby was born. Not before I'd lose everything. You were supposed to be my sister, Lily. You were supposed to protect me. Lily's tears came harder. I made a mistake. Please, don't destroy him. He's already panicking about the divorce. You'll ruin his career. Sarah's eyes narrowed. So this is why you're here. Not to apologize, to protect him. No, Lily insisted, stepping forward. I'm scared. He's not who you think he is. He's angry, Sarah. He blames you for everything. The words hit Sarah like a punch. What did you just say? Lily lowered her gaze. He said he'll fight for custody. He told me you're unstable, that you've been emotional, taking medication, acting irrational. He's gathering people to back him up. Sarah's pulse thundered. Every muscle in her body tensed. Get out, she said quietly. Lily shook her head, crying harder. Please, I'll help you. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. Just, please forgive me. Sarah looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment, she didn't see a friend or an enemy. She saw a coward, a woman who wanted forgiveness without facing consequence. You don't get forgiveness, Lily, Sarah said softly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. She reached into the drawer by the door and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was the friendship bracelet, sisters by choice. She pressed it into Lily's shaking hand. Here, you left this behind years ago. I just didn't realize it. Lily's face crumpled. Sarah? But Sarah had already closed the door. Her hands trembled as she leaned against it, heart racing. Grace had warned her this would happen, that the moment she gained control, they'd both try to twist the story. Sarah took a deep breath, wiped her tears, and dialed Grace. She came here, she said. Lily? She says he's planning to take the baby. Grace's voice turned cold. Then we tighten everything. Don't speak to either of them again. I'll file an emergency custody clause before he even tries. Sarah nodded, gripping her belly protectively. He's not taking my child, not after all this. When she hung up, she looked around her empty apartment, the calm before another storm. Outside, the wind howled down the Manhattan streets. Inside, Sarah whispered to herself, "Let them come. I'm ready now." And for the first time, she believed it. The next day, Manhattan glowed cold and metallic under the December sun. Sarah Miller sat in her living room, phone buzzing non-stop, unknown numbers, missed calls, blocked voicemails. Michael was clearly spiraling. Grace had warned her, when men like him lose control, they get desperate, expect manipulation. At 11 a.m., her phone lit up again. This time, it wasn't Michael. It was Dr. Klein, her supervisor at the hospital. "Sarah, can you come in for a quick meeting?" he asked, his tone polite but formal. A familiar chill ran down her spine. She'd worked with Dr. Klein for 6 years, and he never called her on weekends. "Of course," she said carefully. "Is everything all right?" "Yes, just some HR matters. See you at 1. She hung up, heart pounding. Something felt wrong. 2 hours later, Sarah arrived at the hospital. The sterile scent, once comforting, now made her stomach twist. She walked into the administrative office and froze. Michael was sitting there, perfectly calm, in a navy suit, a folder in his hand. Dr. Klein looked uncomfortable. "Sarah, thank you for coming. Your husband reached out with some concerns about your health and workload during pregnancy." Her vision blurred with rage. "He what?" Michael stood, voice smooth and sympathetic. "I was just worried about her, that's all. She's been under tremendous stress, mood swings, erratic behavior. I thought the hospital should know, just in case it affects her patients." The audacity of it hit like ice water. He was trying to build his custody case, to make her look unstable, even at work. Sarah's throat burned, but she stayed composed. "Dr. Klein," she said calmly, "I have never missed a shift, never endangered a patient, and never let personal matters interfere with my job. My husband, however, is currently facing a legal separation due to infidelity. I'd appreciate it if the hospital didn't become part of his defense strategy." Michael's mask slipped. "This isn't about that. It's about you needing help." "Help?" Sarah's voice rose. "You want to talk about help?" Maybe help is what you needed before crawling into my best friend's bed." The room went dead silent. Dr. Klein's pen froze midair. Michael's jaw tightened. "See what I mean?" he said quietly. Unstable. That word, again. Unstable. As if every woman who'd ever been betrayed must also be broken. Sarah forced herself to inhale deeply, then smiled faintly. "If I'm unstable, then maybe you shouldn't have left your credit card receipt at the Park Hyatt, room 1912. I hear the staff there have excellent memories." Michael's face drained of color. Dr. Klein blinked, realizing the gravity of what was happening. "All right, I think we're done here," he said quickly. "Sarah, take the rest of the day off." Sarah nodded and turned to leave, but before she stepped out, she looked at Michael and whispered, "You can't control me anymore." He leaned close, just enough for her to hear. "You'll regret this, Sarah. You have no idea what I'm capable of." She met his gaze, eyes steady. "Neither do you." She walked out without looking back, the sound of her boots sharp against the tile, each step a declaration that she was done being small. Outside, the sky had darkened. Snow began to fall again, slow and silent. Sarah stood by the hospital's glass doors, breathing in the cold air. She wasn't crying, she was planning. By the time she reached home, her phone buzzed with a message from Grace. He made his move. Now it's our turn. Sarah sat on the couch, hand on her belly, whispering to her unborn child, "He thinks he's God, but even gods fall." The snow kept falling, soft but relentless, just like her resolve. That night, Manhattan pulsed with the quiet rhythm of snow and traffic. Inside her dimly lit apartment, Sarah Miller sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers, receipts, and folders Grace had sent earlier that evening. The walls felt like witnesses, silent, patient, waiting for her next move. Grace's voice echoed from their phone call. "He's playing dirty, so we play smarter. We need documentation, financial trails, and witnesses." Sarah flipped through a stack of bank statements. Michael's income from Carter Real Estate Group was steady, too steady for the kind of lavish lifestyle he flaunted. Expensive dinners, designer watches, weekend business trips. The math didn't add up. She highlighted multiple hotel charges, Park Hyatt, Four Seasons, the Langham, all within weeks of each other. Then she found something new, a wire transfer to Harper Marketing LLC, Lily's company. Sarah's heart skipped. It wasn't just betrayal of love. It was financial fraud disguised as consulting. Grace had been right. Michael wasn't only unfaithful, he was reckless. Her phone buzzed. Grace again. "Find anything?" "Enough to bury him," Sarah said quietly. "Good. Email everything to me. I'll forward it to the investigator." Sarah hesitated. "Grace, he went to my boss today, tried to paint me as unstable." "I know," Grace replied calmly. "That's why we document his instability. He's trying to provoke you. Don't bite. Let him hang himself with his own lies." Sarah nodded, feeling both fear and fierce purpose. Hours passed. Midnight crept in. The city hummed below her window. Then, just as she was organizing the final stack of documents, her phone buzzed again. An incoming video call. "Michael." She froze, then declined. Seconds later, a text appeared. "Answer me, Sarah. You're making a fool of yourself. Lily's done with this drama. She left town. You still have a chance to fix this quietly." Sarah stared at the words. Lily left town? Guilt, maybe, or fear. Either way, it didn't matter. Another message popped up. "You don't want me as your enemy." Sarah felt the old instinct. Fear, the kind that made her small. But then she saw the ultrasound photo pinned to the fridge. Her baby. Her reason. She steadied herself and typed back, "You already are." Almost instantly, her phone rang again. Unknown number. She didn't answer. A voicemail came through. Michael's voice, slurred and angry. "You think Grace can save you? She'll take your money and leave you broke. You can't win against me, Sarah. You're nothing without me." Sarah replayed the message twice, saving the recording to her evidence folder. "Proof," she whispered to herself. "Keep talking, Michael. Every word is a weapon, and you're handing them to me." At 2 a.m., her doorbell rang. She froze. Her building had strict security. No one could come up unannounced. She checked the peephole. An envelope lay on the floor. No one in sight. Inside was a single piece of paper. A printed photo of her sitting at the hospital cafeteria, hand on her belly, unaware she was being watched. On the bottom, someone had scrawled, "You can't hide forever." Sarah's blood ran cold. She locked the door, double-checked the windows, and called Grace immediately. "He's stalking me," she said, voice trembling. Grace's tone hardened. We'll get a restraining order first thing in the morning. Do not leave your apartment alone. Keep every message, every photo." Sarah hung up, her heart pounding. She sat on the couch, clutching her belly, whispering, "You're safe. Mommy won't let him win." Outside, Manhattan's lights blurred through falling snow. Inside, Sarah stared at the photo again. And for the first time, she didn't just see fear. She saw evidence. He thought he'd intimidate her. He'd just given her the rope to end him. The next morning, the city woke to freezing rain that glazed the streets like glass. Sarah Miller barely slept. Every creak in her apartment felt like a threat. Every car door outside made her flinch. The photo left at her door still sat on the counter. The words, "You can't hide forever," etched into her mind like a scar. At 8 a.m., Grace Mitchell called. Her voice was sharp, all business. "Sarah, listen carefully. Don't go anywhere alone. My driver's coming to pick you up in 30 minutes. We're going straight to the courthouse to file the restraining order." Sarah nodded, even though Grace couldn't see her. "He's getting worse," she whispered. "I know," Grace replied. "That's why we move now." Half an hour later, a sleek black Mercedes pulled up outside her building. Sarah climbed in, wrapped in a long beige coat, her belly pressing gently against the seatbelt. The driver, a quiet man named Victor, nodded respectfully. "Miss Miller, Miss Mitchell said to bring you straight to the courthouse. You're safe." The word safe sounded almost foreign. At the courthouse, Grace was waiting, immaculate as always in her gray wool coat and leather gloves, her expression unreadable. She hugged Sarah briefly, the kind of hug that said, "I'm here, but we have work to do." Inside, the legal clerk guided them through a maze of paperwork. Temporary restraining order, emergency filing, based on harassment and stalking. "Do you have evidence?" Sarah pulled out her phone, her hands trembling slightly. Messages, voicemails, this photo. Grace spread everything across the counter with surgical precision. "He's violated privacy and made direct threats. That's enough for an emergency order." As the clerk processed the forms, Sarah stared at the ink drying on the signature line. Sarah Miller versus Michael Carter. The words looked heavier than before, but also powerful. Final. When they walked out into the cold air again, Grace's phone buzzed. She read the message and smiled grimly. "Our investigator found something." Sarah frowned. "What?" "Michael's been siphoning company funds, fake consulting invoices to Harper Marketing LLC, Lily's company. He thought he was clever, but he left a paper trail. We'll send it to his firm anonymously first. By the time he realizes, it'll be too late." Sarah blinked. "So he loses his job before the trial?" Grace nodded. "Exactly. Let him feel what it's like to lose everything." For the first time in days, Sarah laughed, short, shaky, but real. "You're terrifying, Grace." Grace smirked. "That's why you hired me." They stopped for lunch at a quiet Italian cafe near the courthouse. The warmth, the smell of roasted garlic, and the soft hum of conversation wrapped Sarah in a brief illusion of normalcy. She ordered tea, avoiding caffeine, while Grace scrolled through her tablet. Suddenly, Grace looked up. "You'll need a public statement soon." "A statement?" "Yes. Once the order becomes official, it'll show up in public records. Reporters love high-profile divorces, especially with a man like Michael Carter. Flashy, wealthy, local connections. You need to control the narrative." Sarah hesitated. "I don't want attention." "You don't need attention," Grace said firmly. "You need truth on your side." Sarah nodded slowly. "Okay, but no interviews. If I speak, it'll be on my terms." "Good girl," Grace said with a rare approving smile. As they stepped outside, snow began to fall again, soft, deliberate flakes swirling around the courthouse steps. Grace turned to Sarah. "You did something big today. You took back your power." Sarah looked up at the gray sky. "Then why does it still hurt so much?" Grace's voice softened. "Because healing always hurts before it frees you." They stood there in silence, snow dusting their coats, two women against the storm, one broken, one forged by fire, both learning that survival wasn't about staying quiet anymore. Back in the car, Sarah touched her belly and whispered, "He can't touch us now." For the first time, she believed it. 3 days later, Manhattan's skyline gleamed like steel under the winter sun. Sarah Miller sat in her apartment, sipping decaf coffee while scrolling through her emails. Her name was everywhere now, not in tabloids, but in the legal filings, the bank reports, the paper trail Grace's investigator had built brick by brick. Michael Carter's empire was cracking. At 9 a.m. Grace called. Her tone was calm but laced with satisfaction. "It's happening." Sarah set her mug down carefully. "What's happening?" Grace's smile could be heard through the phone. "His company's board just got the anonymous package, financial reports, falsified invoices, payments to Harper Marketing LLC. They're holding an emergency meeting in 1 hour." Sarah's breath caught. "Will they fire him?" "They'll do worse," Grace replied. "They'll investigate." By noon, the storm had broken. Sarah's phone buzzed non-stop. Coworkers, old friends, even neighbors from the building texting variations of, "Have you seen the news?" She opened the first link and froze. "Carter Real Estate under investigation for misuse of funds. CFO suspended pending review." There it was. Michael's photo plastered across the headline, his perfect smile suddenly looking like a smirk caught mid-fall. Sarah exhaled, leaning back on the couch. She felt no triumph, only quiet relief, justice unfolding on its own timeline. Then the doorbell rang. Her pulse jumped. But when she checked the peephole, it wasn't Michael. It was Victor, Grace's driver. He held out an envelope. "From Ms. Mitchell," he said. Inside was a copy of the restraining order, now official and permanent. Michael Carter was legally forbidden to contact her or come within 300 feet of her home or workplace. The judge's signature gleamed at the bottom like a seal of protection. Sarah whispered, "It's real." Victor nodded respectfully. "Miss Stack Mitchell also asked me to tell you to turn on Channel 5. Sarah grabbed the remote, her heart thudding as the TV flickered to life. The anchor's voice was steady, neutral. "Breaking news. Carter Real Estate's CFO Michael Carter has been placed on indefinite leave after internal allegations of financial misconduct. Sources close to the case say evidence links Carter to a fraudulent consulting firm operated by marketing executive Lily Harper." Sarah's hands tightened around the remote. Lily's name. The camera cut to a grainy photo of Lily leaving her apartment, surrounded by reporters. Her sunglasses couldn't hide her panic. "No comment," she kept repeating, her voice trembling. Grace's timing was perfect. She hadn't just exposed Michael, she'd burned his accomplice with him. The phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, Sarah opened it. "You think you've won? But this isn't over." She stared at the text. No name, no number, but she knew the tone. Michael's pride wouldn't die quietly. She forwarded the message to Grace with a single line. "He's still trying." Within seconds, Grace replied, "Good. The more he contacts you, the deeper his hole gets. We'll present this to the judge if needed." Sarah placed her phone face down and walked to the window. Outside, the city moved on. Taxis honking, people laughing, unaware of the quiet war that had just ended inside her life. She touched her belly gently. "We did it, baby. He can't hurt us anymore." A single tear slipped down her cheek, not of sadness, but release. Behind her, the TV played one last line before fading to commercial. Michael Carter, once praised for his business acumen, now faces the potential of criminal charges if fraud is confirmed. Sarah turned off the screen. The silence felt sacred. For the first time in months, she wasn't reacting, she was in control. Michael Carter had fallen, not from her anger, but from his own arrogance. And that, Sarah thought, was the sweetest justice of all. The news of Michael Carter's downfall spread through Manhattan like wildfire. By morning, every business blog and local paper was dissecting the scandal. CFO suspended, assets frozen, mistress exposed. For years, he'd built a persona of success. The luxury penthouse, the Mercedes S-Class, the Mont Blanc pen he always signed deals with. Now, that empire was unraveling, one headline at a time. Sarah Miller woke up to it all, not with panic, but with eerie calm. The apartment felt lighter, as if even the walls were exhaling. She brewed herself tea and opened the curtains to let the weak winter light in. Her phone buzzed again. Dozens of messages. Old acquaintances, distant relatives, people who once envied her perfect life. Most of them weren't checking on her. They were checking on the gossip. She ignored them all. But one message caught her eye. From an unknown number. The words were short, sharp. "You think you're safe? You just started a war you can't win." Sarah's stomach clenched. She knew that tone. Michael again. He was cornered, and cornered men were dangerous. She forwarded the message to Grace, then set the phone aside and focused on her breathing, like the yoga instructor in her support group had taught. In through the nose. Out through the pain. By 10 a.m., Grace called. "He's furious," she said. "And that's good. Angry men make mistakes. He sent those threats from his personal number. I've already filed it with the judge. If he comes near you, he's done. Sarah exhaled. He's already done, Grace. Grace chuckled softly. No, sweetheart, he's about to be. Later that afternoon, Grace stopped by with a folder and a faint smile. I have something for you. Sarah opened it. Inside was a copy of Michael's official suspension letter, along with the court's confirmation of the permanent restraining order. It's real now, Grace said. He can't touch you legally or financially, and since the investigation went public, his accounts are frozen. He'll be lucky to keep his car. Sarah looked down at the papers. The same man who once controlled every dollar, every detail, now stripped of his power. Grace watched her carefully. How do you feel? Sarah hesitated, then said, free and sad, both at once. That's normal, Grace said gently. Freedom always feels strange after a cage. Sarah smiled weakly. You sound like my therapist. Your therapist sounds like me. Grace replied with a wink. They both laughed. The first real laughter that had filled Sarah's apartment in months. When Grace left, Sarah sat quietly for a long time, staring at the city lights through the window. She thought about the girl she used to be, the one who believed love meant loyalty at all costs. That girl had died the night she said, "Happy Thanksgiving, Michael." The woman who replaced her wasn't fragile. She was deliberate. Around dusk, her phone buzzed again. This time, an email notification from her hospital administrator. Her heart raced, afraid of bad news, but when she opened it, she froze. Subject: re-promotion opportunity, nurse supervisor opening. The message was short. Sarah, your dedication has not gone unnoticed. We'd like to invite you to apply for the supervisor role starting next quarter. Her throat tightened. After everything, the chaos, the humiliation, she was still being recognized for her work. She placed a hand over her belly and whispered, "See, baby? We're not broken. We're rebuilding." That night, she lit a candle by the window, a small ritual she'd learned from her support group. One flame for survival, one for rebirth. The city outside glowed golden, like it was lighting the path ahead. In a quiet whisper, she said to herself, "He wanted to ruin me. Instead, he made me unshakable." And somewhere in the distance, as the sirens faded and snow began to fall again, Sarah finally smiled, not out of revenge, but out of peace. Because she had survived the storm, and now she was learning how to live after it. The next morning, Manhattan was calm, the kind of stillness that comes after a storm. Sarah Miller woke early, unable to sleep. The faint hum of the city drifted through her apartment window. For the first time in months, she didn't wake up dreading the day ahead. Still, the bruises of memory lingered, invisible but deep. She moved slowly, her hand resting over her belly as she made breakfast. The baby had been quiet that morning, as if sensing her mother's exhaustion. "We're okay," she whispered softly. "We're safe now." Her phone buzzed again, another message from an unknown number. She braced herself for Michael's usual venom, but this time it was different. "Please, just talk to me. You don't understand what they're doing to me." Sarah's chest tightened. She almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. The man who ruined her life was now begging for mercy. She didn't respond. Instead, she opened her journal, the one she'd started after joining the Phoenix Mothers group. On the top of a new page, she wrote, "Day 23. Let silence speak for me." After breakfast, she met Grace at her office on Park Avenue. The sleek glass building shimmered in the winter sunlight, and as Sarah entered, she caught her reflection in the lobby mirror. Stronger, calmer, no longer the woman who'd once begged for love. Grace looked up from her desk, smiling faintly. "You look different," Sarah shrugged. "Maybe I finally slept." Grace chuckled. "Or maybe you finally stopped caring about what he thinks." They sat down to review updates. Grace pulled out a set of documents, Michael's financial disclosures. "The investigation's moving fast," she said. "His accounts are frozen. His firm's board issued a statement this morning. He's been officially terminated." Sarah's heart skipped. "It's really over?" Grace nodded. "Professionally, yes. Legally, almost. The court date for your settlement is next week. Once that's done, you'll have full custody and control of the shared assets." Sarah's eyes filled with quiet tears. "I don't even care about the money. I just want peace." Grace leaned forward. "And that's exactly why you'll win. He's still fighting for ego. You're fighting for freedom." Sarah exhaled, smiling through her tears. Thank you, Grace, for everything. Grace waved it off. Don't thank me yet. There's still a chance he'll try one last move. They always do. She was right. That evening, Sarah returned home to find another envelope at her door. Hand-delivered. No name, just her address written in Michael's handwriting. Her chest tightened. She picked it up carefully and opened it inside. Inside were two things: a handwritten letter and a silver ultrasound photo frame, the one she had bought months ago for him to keep on his desk. The letter read, "I know I made mistakes. I lost everything, but I still want to be in my child's life. Please don't take that away from me. I'm sorry, Sarah." For a moment, tears welled up again. But then she looked at the photo frame, still sealed in its box, never opened. He hadn't cared when he had the chance. She folded the letter neatly and placed it back in the envelope. Then she walked to the trash bin and dropped it in without a second thought. Her phone buzzed again, this time a message from her support group. "Weekly meeting tonight at the River Cafe, 7 p.m. Sarah looked at the clock. She hesitated, then smiled. "Yeah," she whispered. "It's time to go live again." That night, dressed in a soft cream sweater and a long coat, she stepped into the crisp winter air. The lights of the Brooklyn Bridge sparkled above her as she walked toward the cafe by the river. Inside, laughter and warmth filled the space. Women greeted her with hugs, stories, hope. And as Sarah sat among them, the sound of the city faded behind her. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't thinking about Michael Carter. She was thinking about tomorrow. Snowflakes danced over the East River that night as Sarah Miller left the River Cafe. Her cheeks were flushed from laughter, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She had spent the evening surrounded by women who understood her pain, women who had walked through fire and come out unburned. For the first time, Sarah didn't feel like a victim. She felt like a survivor. But survival, she was about to learn, doesn't come without one final test. When she reached her apartment building, the lobby was quiet. The doorman, Mr. Peters, smiled kindly. "Evening, Mrs. Miller. Congratulations, by the way." Sarah blinked. "Congratulations?" he chuckled. "Saw your name on the news scroll. The court granted your restraining order and full custody request. The city's talking about it." Sarah smiled softly. "Thank you." She took the elevator up to her floor, the hum of machinery filling the silence. But as the doors slid open, her stomach clenched, the hallway lights flickered, and her front door was slightly ajar. Her heart froze. She stepped closer, her pulse racing. "Hello?" she called, voice trembling. No answer. She pushed the door open slowly. The apartment was dark, except for the faint glow from the living room window. Everything looked untouched, except for the coffee table. There, sitting neatly in the center, was a single envelope. Her breath caught. The handwriting on it was unmistakable. Michael Carter. She didn't move for a full minute. Then, gathering every ounce of courage, she picked it up and tore it open. Inside were photographs, candid, intimate shots of her at the hospital, at home, at the courthouse. Some were taken through windows, others from across the street. The last photo showed her that very morning, standing by her apartment window, looking down at the city. Her knees almost gave out. She stumbled backward and caught herself on the counter. A note fell out of the envelope. The message was short and scrawled in a shaky hand. "If I can't have peace, neither can you." The sound of her heartbeat filled the silence. He'd been there, watching, waiting. Sarah's phone slipped from her hand as she dialed Grace with trembling fingers. "He was here," she whispered. "He broke in. He's been following me." Grace's voice was calm but firm. "Lock yourself in a room right now. I'm calling the police. Stay on the line." Sarah obeyed, retreating to the bedroom and locking the door. The minutes crawled by, each second heavier than the last. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. When the officers arrived, they swept through the apartment. One of them, Officer Ramirez, found the lock on her front door pried open with a tool. "He forced entry," he said grimly. "You did the right thing calling us." Sarah nodded numbly, hugging herself. "He's losing control," she murmured. Ramirez's partner collected the photos and note for evidence. "We'll file an escalation under the restraining order. He's crossed the line from harassment to criminal stalking. He won't walk away from this one." Grace arrived moments later, her heels clicking across the hardwood floor. She pulled Sarah into a rare, tight hug. "You're okay," she whispered. "He's finished." Sarah's voice cracked. "How do you know?" Grace stepped back, her eyes steely. Because he just committed the one act that proves everything we've been saying. Obsession. The judge will see it, the police will see it, and when they do, he'll lose not just his freedom, but any right to ever see you or your child again. Sarah exhaled shakily, tears spilling down her cheeks. The fear slowly drained, replaced by exhaustion and relief. As the officers left, she walked to the window, watching their patrol car disappear into the falling snow. The city lights shimmered below, indifferent yet beautiful. She whispered to her unborn child, "That was his last move. Ours is tomorrow. We start over." Behind her, Grace nodded, eyes softening. "And this time, he can't touch a thing." For the first time in a long time, Sarah believed her. A week later, the courtroom on Center Street buzzed with whispers. The media had caught wind of the case. The pregnant wife versus the disgraced CFO. Cameras flashed outside the marble steps, reporters shouting questions Sarah Miller didn't answer. She kept her head down, a soft beige coat draped over her shoulders. Grace Mitchell by her side like a silent shield. Inside, the air was heavy. Michael Carter sat at the defendant's table, his once polished look now dull. His expensive suit couldn't hide the dark circles under his eyes. He looked smaller, like a man who had lost his empire and was now scrambling to salvage his pride. Sarah refused to look at him. Not out of hatred, but because she simply didn't care anymore. Grace leaned close, whispering, "Stay calm. Let the evidence do the talking." The judge entered, stern and composed. "Court is now in session." Michael's lawyer stood first, slick and rehearsed. "Your Honor, my client disputes the harassment claims. He admits emotional conflict but denies any intent to cause harm." Grace rose smoothly. "Your Honor, we have documented proof that Mr. Carter violated the restraining order, broke into Mrs. Miller's residence, and left threatening messages. We also have photographic evidence and voice recordings." The judge nodded. "Proceed." Grace pressed a button on her laptop. The courtroom speakers came alive with Michael's recorded voicemail. His voice low and venomous. "You think Grace can save you? You're nothing without me." The sound sent a visible ripple through the room. Michael's jaw tightened. Grace didn't pause. Exhibit B, photos taken from her home after he broke in. She placed the images on the projector. Sarah's apartment, the note, the photos of her taken without consent. Even the judge's expression darkened. Michael's attorney scrambled. "Objection, this is character assassination." "Overruled," the judge said flatly. Grace turned, her tone soft but cutting. "Mr. Carter, did you take these photos yourself?" Michael shifted in his seat. "No, of course not." "Did you hire someone to take them?" "I don't have to answer that." Grace's eyes glinted. "Actually, you do, because the investigator we hired found a payment from your account to a private surveillance firm 2 days before these photos were delivered to Mrs. Miller's door." The courtroom fell silent. Michael's face went pale. Grace stepped closer, her voice sharp. "You violated a restraining order, stalked your pregnant wife, and now try to call it emotional conflict? This isn't love, Mr. Carter. It's control." The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Carter, do you deny this payment?" Michael's lawyer whispered frantically, but he knew the truth was cornering him. He swallowed hard. I just wanted to know what she was doing." Grace's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "She was carrying your child. That's what she was doing." A murmur swept through the courtroom. Sarah sat still, tears quietly pooling in her eyes, not of pain, but release. The judge finally spoke, voice calm but decisive. "Mr. Carter, this court finds you in violation of your restraining order and guilty of harassment and unlawful surveillance. You are hereby ordered to complete mandatory counseling and community service, and you will have no contact, direct or indirect, with Mrs. Miller or the child once born." Michael slumped in his chair, disbelief washing over his face. His world, the money, the image, the power, gone. Grace placed a reassuring hand on Sarah's shoulder. "It's done," she whispered. Outside, when they stepped into the cold air, cameras exploded in flashes. Grace guided Sarah through the crowd as reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Miller, how does it feel to win?" Sarah paused, her breath visible in the winter air. She looked straight into one of the cameras, eyes clear and steady. "It's not about winning," she said softly. "It's about finally being free." The crowd fell silent for a moment. Even the wind seemed to still. As she walked away, Grace smiled faintly. "You just ended his story, Sarah." Sarah looked at the snow falling over the courthouse steps. "No," she said quietly. "I just started mine." 2 weeks after the trial, winter loosened its grip on Manhattan. The holidays had passed, but the city still shimmered beneath soft layers of snow. For Sarah Miller, life had finally begun to slow down. The court case was over, Michael was gone, and peace, fragile but real, had started to take root in her world. But peace, like birth, often comes through pain. It was a quiet Saturday morning when the first contraction hit. Sarah was sitting on the couch, reading Women Who Run with the Wolves. A gift from Grace, when a sharp, deep wave rolled through her body. She gasped, clutching her belly. The clock on the wall read 6:47 a.m. Her water broke 20 minutes later. She grabbed her hospital bag, already packed weeks before, and called Grace. "Don't panic," Grace said instantly. "Victor's on his way. Breathe, Sarah. Just breathe." By the time she reached New York Presbyterian Hospital, the contractions were coming faster. The nurses recognized her immediately and rushed her to the maternity ward. One of them smiled reassuringly. "You're in good hands now, sweetheart." Lying in the hospital bed, Sarah gripped the rail as another wave of pain hit. But behind that pain, there was something fierce, determination. This wasn't just childbirth. This was rebirth. Grace arrived moments later, breathless, her heels clicking down the hallway. "You didn't think I'd let you do this alone, did you?" she said, smiling softly as she took Sarah's hand. Sarah laughed through a tear. "You're supposed to be my lawyer, not my doula." "Too bad," Grace said, squeezing her hand. "Today, I'm both." Hours passed. The snow outside thickened, turning the city into a white blur. Between contractions, Sarah drifted in and out of memory. Flashes of her old life, her wedding, the betrayal, the trial. Each image passed like waves, retreating from the shore. Then, at 2:11 p.m., the sound came. The first cry of her child, a tiny, beautiful sound that shattered every wall around her heart. The nurse lifted the baby and placed him in Sarah's trembling arms. "Congratulations, Mommy. It's a boy." Sarah stared down at him, soft skin, perfect eyes, tiny fingers curling around her own. All the pain, the fear, the betrayal, it all dissolved in that instant. Grace stood nearby, quietly wiping her own eyes. "He's perfect, Sarah." Sarah smiled weakly, whispering to her son, "You're my miracle, my second chance." Hours later, as the baby slept beside her, Sarah's phone buzzed on the bedside table. She hesitated, expecting another ghost from her past. But it wasn't Michael. It was a message from the hospital staff. "Security update. Michael Carter attempted entry into the hospital lobby earlier. He was escorted off the property immediately." Sarah's heart skipped, not from fear, but from calm certainty. He couldn't touch her anymore. She texted Grace the update. Within seconds, the reply came, "Let the system deal with him. You rest. He's already erased himself from your story." Sarah put the phone down and looked at her sleeping baby. The snow outside reflected on the window, glowing softly against the night. She whispered, "You'll never have to know his cruelty. You'll only know strength, kindness, and love." The baby stirred, a faint smile curling on his lips, as if he understood. Sarah leaned back, exhausted but content. For the first time in years, she didn't feel haunted. She felt whole. Outside, the city hummed with distant lights, but inside that small hospital room, time stood still. A mother and her newborn, cocooned in peace. Sarah kissed her son's forehead and whispered one final promise, steady and sure. "From this moment on, it's just you and me, and no one will ever hurt us again." And with that, Sarah Miller finally closed her eyes, not in pain, but in peace. 3 months later, spring had crept quietly into Manhattan. The snow was gone, replaced by budding trees and sunlight spilling through the high-rise windows of Sarah Miller's new apartment in Brooklyn Heights. Her life had changed completely. Smaller, simpler, but peaceful. The baby, named Ethan James Miller, slept soundly in a white bassinet by the window. The morning light caught his tiny face, soft and calm, a reflection of the safety she'd fought so hard to create. Sarah sat at her desk, sipping lukewarm coffee, the faint aroma of vanilla filling the room. She opened her journal, the one that had carried her through the darkest nights, and wrote on a fresh page, Day 90. Closure. She took a deep breath, picked up a pen, and began writing a letter she never intended to send. Dear Michael, I used to think forgiveness meant letting someone back in, but now I know it means letting go, without hate, without fear. You destroyed the version of me who waited, who believed, who loved you unconditionally. But in doing so, you created the woman who no longer needs you. I don't wish you pain. I just hope one day you understand what it feels like to lose everything you took for granted. Our son will never know you, not because I'm cruel, but because love shouldn't be something to fear. I'll raise him to be the kind of man who never confuses power with strength. You wanted control. I found freedom. You wanted silence. I found my voice. And when I said Happy Thanksgiving that night, I didn't know it would be my goodbye. But now I see it was the start of everything new. Sarah. When she finished, she set the pen down and stared at the letter. Her hands trembled, not from anger, but from the weight finally lifting off her shoulders. Ethan stirred in his sleep, making a soft cooing sound. She smiled and whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's done carrying the past." Just then, her phone buzzed, a message from Grace. Court update. Michael pled guilty to harassment. 6 months of probation, mandatory counseling, and a 5-year restraining order. It's officially over. Sarah exhaled deeply, closing her eyes. Over. Grace followed up with another message. Lunch at the plaza next week? I'm buying. You've earned it. Sarah laughed softly. Even now, Grace couldn't resist a touch of luxury. She walked to the window, cradling Ethan in her arms. The skyline shimmered across the river, a reminder of where she came from and what she'd survived. Below, people hurried along the streets, unaware of the quiet victory happening above them. Her reflection in the glass caught her off guard. Gone was the woman who'd once lived in fear, who'd begged for love from someone unworthy. The woman staring back at her now was calm, confident, whole. She picked up the letter again, folded it neatly, and tucked it inside her journal. Some things, she whispered, don't need to be sent. They just need to be said. Then, as if on cue, Ethan opened his eyes and looked up at her. His gaze was pure, unburdened, full of trust. Sarah smiled, kissing his forehead. You're my new beginning, she whispered. My proof that light always finds its way back. Outside, a gentle breeze stirred the curtains. The city moved forward, just like she was. Sarah looked out one last time, her voice barely a whisper. He chose my best friend. But life chose me. And this time, it wasn't pain that filled her chest. It was peace. Real, earned peace. 1 year later, the golden leaves of Central Park swirled in the crisp November breeze as Sarah Miller pushed Ethan's stroller along the winding path. The little boy, now 10 months old, giggled as he tried to grab at the fallen leaves, his tiny fingers brushing the air. It was Thanksgiving Day, the first one that truly belonged to her. No lies, no tears, just peace. Sarah wore a soft beige coat, her hair tied in a loose ponytail, her face glowing with the quiet confidence of a woman who had rebuilt herself from ashes. Beside her, Grace Mitchell walked with a paper cup of Starbucks coffee in one hand and her phone in the other, pretending not to check work emails on a holiday. You're doing it again, Sarah teased. Grace looked up, smirking. I'm multitasking, and before you lecture me, I already turned down 3 client calls today. That's growth. Sarah laughed, a sound that came easily now. You've done enough growing for both of us. They stopped near a park bench overlooking the lake. The skyline shimmered in the distance, sunlight glinting off glass towers, a reminder of everything Sarah once feared and now faced without flinching. Grace handed her a small gift bag. Before you say no, it's not legal paperwork. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Inside was a silver bracelet engraved with 2 words, still standing. Her throat tightened. Grace. You earned it, Grace said softly. You survived him. You survived the noise, and you did it with grace, no pun intended. Sarah smiled, blinking away tears. I couldn't have done it without you. Maybe, Grace said, sipping her coffee, but you're the one who stayed standing. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Ethan babble happily in his stroller. A group of families nearby laughed over a picnic, the scent of roasted turkey and cinnamon filling the air. Sarah's gaze drifted upward to the sky, the same sky that had watched her the night everything fell apart. And she realized something she'd never understood before. Peace doesn't arrive in grand gestures. It comes quietly, like breath after crying. Grace nudged her gently. You know, the press still calls him the fallen CFO. He's living with his brother in Jersey now, doing odd accounting jobs. His name's basically blacklisted. Sarah didn't flinch. That's not my concern anymore. Grace studied her for a moment, then smiled. Good answer. Sarah looked at Ethan, his blue eyes wide with wonder as he watched a bird land nearby. "He's my future now," she said softly. "Michael was just the lesson." Grace chuckled. "A very expensive lesson." Sarah laughed, shaking her head. "Worth every scar." Later that afternoon they stopped by the River Cafe, the same place Sarah had gone after everything collapsed. But now the view of the Brooklyn Bridge felt different, brighter, alive. Inside, the hostess smiled warmly. "Table for two and a little one?" Sarah nodded, settling Ethan into a high chair. The waiter arrived with champagne for Grace and sparkling cider for her. "To new traditions," Grace toasted. "To peace," Sarah replied, clinking her glass gently. Outside the window, the city shimmered under the golden sunset. It was the same Manhattan that had once broken her. But now, it was hers again. As dinner ended, she pulled out her phone and opened her journal app. On a new page, she typed, "Day 365, Thanksgiving. 1 year ago, I said goodbye to the man who broke me. Today, I give thanks for the woman I became instead." She saved the entry, then leaned down to kiss Ethan's forehead. "Happy Thanksgiving, my love," she whispered. "We made it." The baby cooed softly, clutching her finger as if to say he already knew. And as the lights of the city flickered to life, Sarah Miller smiled. Not as the woman who was left behind, but as the one who rose. Her story hadn't ended in heartbreak. It ended in freedom. The rain poured over Manhattan like a confession. It was late evening, and Lily Harper sat alone inside a tiny cafe on 9th Avenue, her reflection trembling in the fogged-up glass. Her once perfect manicure was chipped, her phone screen cracked. She hadn't slept properly in weeks. Outside, a digital billboard still flashed her name, not in lights of success, but in shame. Lily Harper under federal investigation for financial fraud. Her coffee sat untouched, cold, like the silence that had followed her since Michael Carter turned on her. She thought of him often, not with love, but with disbelief. The man who once whispered promises in hotel rooms now refused to answer her calls. When the investigators came, he gave them everything. Her invoices, her emails, her signature on every falsified transaction. He saved himself by destroying her. The irony was cruel. She had betrayed Sarah to feel powerful, and now she was powerless because of him. Her lawyer's words echoed from earlier that morning. "If you cooperate, you'll avoid prison. But your career's over, Lily. No firm will touch your name again." She'd nodded numbly, pretending to understand, but truthfully, she hadn't heard anything after, "Your career's over." A gust of wind rattled the cafe door. She looked up, startled, half expecting to see him walk in. But it was no one. Just the ghost of her choices. Her phone buzzed, an email notification from Sarah Miller. Her heart stopped. Hands trembling, she opened it. It wasn't a message, just 2 words and a photo attachment. "Goodbye, Lily." The photo was of Sarah holding her newborn son, eyes peaceful, smile radiant. There was no anger in her face, no trace of vengeance, only strength. That was the moment Lily broke. Not because Sarah hated her, but because Sarah didn't. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. The bitterness that had consumed her finally turned into something else. Regret. She whispered to no one, "I wanted your life, Sarah, and I ruined mine trying to take it." The cafe was closing. The waiter approached gently. "Miss, we're shutting down for the night." Lily nodded weakly, packing her things into a worn-out leather bag. Her once luxury world had shrunk to a few essentials: a phone, a wallet, and a reputation that could never be cleaned. As she stepped outside, the rain hit her face like absolution. She walked aimlessly through the streets, past store windows reflecting who she used to be. Confident, envied, untouchable. Now, she was invisible. A headline from a nearby newsstand caught her eye. "Sarah Miller Foundation launches program for women recovering from toxic relationships." Lily stared at the words for a long moment. Then she smiled faintly. Sad, small, but real. Sarah hadn't just survived. She had turned her pain into purpose. Lily looked up at the night sky, rain dripping from her lashes, and whispered, "You won, Sarah. And you deserve to." Then she walked toward the subway, disappearing into the crowd. No camera, no spotlight, just another soul learning her lesson too late. And as the city lights blurred around her, one truth finally sank in. She hadn't lost everything because of Michael. She'd lost everything the day she chose to betray a woman who only ever loved her like family. So that's it, my friends. The story has come full circle. If you're still here, still watching at this very moment, it means something in Sarah's journey touched your heart in a quiet, honest way. Maybe it reminded you that pain doesn't define you, it refines you. Life will break us, yes, but as Marcus Aurelius once said, the obstacle is the way. Every betrayal, every heartbreak, every ending carries the seed of a new beginning, if we choose to see it. Sarah's strength wasn't born from revenge. It was born from acceptance, from learning to stand in the storm without losing her softness. We all have a Thanksgiving night in our lives, a moment when everything we trusted falls apart. But that night is not the end. It's the start of becoming who we were always meant to be. So if you're healing, keep going. If you're rebuilding, keep believing. And if this story made you feel even a little less alone tonight, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because somewhere out there, another soul needs this reminder too. You are stronger than what broke you.